Thank you for welcoming us to Laney. It's been an exciting afternoon. So we're going to call this meeting to order, and I will ask Student Trustee Pierce to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we'll move to roll call.
Student Trustee Parmigiani? Here. Student Trustee Byrne?
Here.
Trustee Withrow?
Here.
Trustee Johannes? Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan?
I'm right here.
Trustee Napoli Villareese? Here. Trustee Gonzalez-Brito?
Here.
Trustee Quinlan?
Here.
Trustee Delphine Polk?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move to 1.4, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Student Trustee Parmigiani?
Yes.
Student Trustee Byrne?
Yes.
Trustee Withrow?
Yes.
Trustee Johannes? Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan?
Yes.
Trustee Napoli Villareese?
Yes.
Trustee Delphine Polk?
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez-Brito?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, so we will now move to public communication on matters that are not on the agenda, 1.5.
We have Raya Zhu. Raya Zion.
Right. All right, that's better. Hi, everyone. My name is Raya Zion, and thank you for having me here today. I'm the manager of the Laney College's Employment Services Center. I've been at Laney for about 10 years, and I actually started the Employment Center when I first started at Laney College. So we are funded by CTE, but I serve the whole campus. At the Laney Employment Services Center, which is located in Building E, we have job coaches and provide resume writing, one-on-one interviewing, coaching, job search coaching, as well as workshops and sector-specific job fairs. The Employment Services Center is also at the center of organizing Laney outreach events, such as the Oakland Manufacturing Day, the open houses, such as the OSD open house and also the CTE open house. And we partner with other of our learning communities when they have any events at the quad. We provide our support in getting community-based organizations or resource organizations to table at their events. Our role, along with helping in students' job searches, we do develop internships, we facilitate apprenticeships, and we also provide other work-based learning opportunities for our students, such as providing industry speakers in the classroom, tours, and anything else that you would apply to work-based learning, which is a very wide spectrum of activities. In addition, the Employment Services Center focuses on developing partnerships and relationships with industry, governmental organizations, schools, education, and community-based organizations. By fostering these relationships, we are instrumental in developing contract ed and customized training opportunities for CTE, as well as our partner departments outside of CTE. We are the go-to support for the Oakland community by facilitating job search, career readiness, and entrepreneur events for off-site events in our partners' locations, such as last year we did facilitate, along with APAS, several career readiness workshops at the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce. We also facilitated an entrepreneur fair at the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce. So we see our role as an entry point to Laney and thus an entry point for opportunities to our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jeff Sinceri.
Hello. Good evening, members of the board, Chancellor Gilkerson, President Besikoff, COO Greg Nelson, yes, Greg, and Sasha. Hey. I was actually thinking about skipping this meeting, but after looking at the agenda materials, I was struck by the PowerPoint presentation from the Laney administrative leadership. I think it was very nice, and the pictures of my colleagues were wonderful. Good on all of you for looking your best, and well done also to the Laney photographers, who I imagine had a substantial role in that. Teamwork. However, amid the positive reflections of what Laney can be, and in many ways what it probably is, I would imagine that discussions with faculty, both part-time and full-time, would yield some comments that might not necessarily be positive, but they would be enlightening and help identify issues maybe a little bit more quickly, since faculty and students are both purveyors and recipients of the teaching and learning processes, respectively. I'm not criticizing the presentation that you'll be seeing in a few minutes, or even speaking directly to it, but rather I am saying that as trustees, being intentional about seeking faculty voices about issues good and bad can buttress the campus tour I hear you took earlier, as well as what will likely be a wonderful presentation you're going to be hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all the public comment we have.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, with that, we will move to 1.6, Laney College presentation to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you so much, Board President. Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me say thank you so much to the Laney College campus for hosting this Board of Trustees meeting tonight. First of all, I want to thank President Besikoff and the entire team here. Want to give kudos to Hope Lane, Janice Brown, Kanetta Barnett, Judy May, Christopher Moore, Vu Pham, Will Jones, Atia Rashada, Tyrone Hall, Erica Hernandez, Ramon Ramos, and the entire Laney custodial team for all the work they did setting up these things. I certainly want to, yes. And as PFT President Jeff Sanseri so kindly said, I really want to say thank you to President Besikoff and the role of the president. So thank you to President Leslie Blakey and Frida Velez for joining the trustees on the tour today that we were able to take. And I want to remind everybody that it's one stop here. We'll be back next year to see more about Laney and hear more. But I want to really thank the incredible tour we had. I want to thank Dean Alexandra Tomas, Dean Beth Maher, who is over there as well, Sydney Thomas, and the entire faculty members who are in the cosmetology department, giving us a bird's eye view of what's happening in that center and talking critically about the needs of that department in terms of the space and the utilization and the ability to grow. I want to thank Matthew Wolpe for joining us on the side right before class to talk about what's happening in the carpentry department, and certainly our wonderful stop at the Citizen. I want to thank Christina and Sam from the Citizen who were there, as well as Professor Gastos, who shared about the program. It was really enlightening to be in the newsroom and hearing about the support in that program. And then want to thank the incredible student services teams who were here supporting us. So APAS, our MESA program, Puente, Amojo Baca, and certainly our Basic Needs Center. So I want to thank everybody for the incredible work they've done. And now and then lastly, want to just say thank you again, always to Neil Bermenko, Alfred Brown, and the entire food services team for the lovely spread and all the gifts that Laney has given us. So I'm proud to wear my Laney Love shirt, be here. And I want to turn it over now to President Besikoff to lead us in the presentation on Laney College. So thank you so much.
Good evening, Chancellor Gilkerson, Board President Gonzalez Brito, members of the governing board, colleagues in education, students, and of course, valued community members as well. I'm Rudy Besikoff, very proud president of Laney College, a pillar that has been serving the Oakland community since 1927 and has been known as Laney now for more than 66 years. We're just so very proud of this place. And I would like to echo our chancellor's gratitude to the entirety of the Laney team for just the immense amount of preparation that went into this evening. And I think as I talk about that, what I'd like to say is that leadership at Laney College is very much, when we talk about pronouns, we use the first person plural, which is we. Across our campus, we have between our union stewards, SEIU and PFT, as well as our 2 Senate vice presidents, we have some great leadership. And then also, we have something called our president's cabinet, which is amazing here. And rather than reading all of the names that are before you, I want to go ahead and quantify amazing for a moment. Leslie Blakey, Dr. Blakey, who is the Faculty Senate President, has also been someone who's been very active at the state level in faculty leadership and serves as the District Academic Senate Vice President as well. Matthew Goldstein, I didn't say president, okay. In addition to that, Hope Lane, who is our classified Senate President. Hope, are you here this evening? There you are. Let's give it up for Hope a second. She is instrumental in statewide leadership for classified professionals. And I would be very remiss if I did not say that. Dr. Becky Epsada, who is not here this evening, represents the region's chief instruction officers on the statewide executive CIO board. And then also, excellence doesn't stop there. We have our outstanding new VPs, Ashish Sani and Lily Espinosa. And then also, just again, representing beyond the leadership is our student body president, Frida Velis, who is also a student athlete on the cross-country team. So really a good breadth of leadership that we have here at Laney. Next slide. It's not clicking.
Just hit the next arrow button.
I did. While we're kind of adjusting things, I'll go ahead and say that I do know what's next, which is to talk to you all about the great presentation that is coming. I'm kind of just teeing it up today. And as with our other 3 Peralta colleges at Laney, it starts with our students. And what better way to say that than to segue to our student body president, Frida Velis.
Let me try to adjust this a little bit. Can you all hear me? All right, wonderful. So good afternoon, everyone, esteemed members of the Board of Trustees. It's an honor to welcome you today. As the ASOC president, I want to begin by thanking you for your continued support to our students and the programs that shape our community. I would like to share some of the initiatives we have been working on recently. We held a voter registration event series where we successfully registered 40 first-time voters, a proud moment for our student government. Additionally, we're working to establish a permanent Latinx club space to further support and empower our Latinx community. We're also going to be hosting a Dia de los Muertos event here on campus, where we're going to be showcasing altars, as well as the movie Coco, and we're going to do it in collaboration with our clubs. We're also in the process of planning a basketball tournament, and while the details are still being finalized, it promises to be an exciting event for the entire campus. I would like to not only hear from me, but also from our students. So I would like to play a quick video.
Laney College, we provide hope and opportunity for our students. Come to Laney and we're gonna make your life change in the positive. 2 claps, ready.
I've had a wonderful experience at Umoja, creating community, have a great study space. I've taken some classes through Umoja to work towards getting my AAT to transfer to a 4-year.
I'm taking construction management courses. I'm on track. They have just recently opened the cafeteria, which is exciting. We're also going to be having a pantry. Black Student Union is here. Puente, Umoja, Ubaka.
I'm a student worker here at the Laney Business Office. I'm actually also recently elected as a student advocate for our ASLC body government.
We're planning on doing a lot of workshops.
We've been to UC Berkeley. This weekend we went to East Bay, to a Puente conference. things that I never thought I could possibly do on my own, but they have helped me.
Without them, I'm not gonna be here.
And Laney College will nurture you as they have nurtured me. And although I'm away from my home, Laney has become my family in Oakland.
All right, thank you so much. Also, I would like to say, as an English as a second language student and a student ambassador for the EPAS program, I have personally experienced the benefits of the Laney's ESOL program, and this program has been instrumental in my academic journey. And I know it continues to support many other students. And with that being said, it's now my privilege to introduce Professor Steve Zetlin, an exceptional ESOL educator.
Hello, everybody. As she said, I'm Steven Zetlin. I'm the chair of ESL at Laney College, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the amazing accomplishments of our department. You can see here I'm starting with dismantling barriers to education. That is what we're all about in this department. So we've done a few things to make it a lot easier for ESOL students to get an education. One is create non-credit mirrored classes that basically equal all of our credit classes. So this opens up the door for undocumented students and people who don't have the money to pay for credit and get the same exact education. The state wanted to make things easier for students to get placed in the right level. And so what our department did was create a guided self-placement. This was actually adopted by the entire district. And also we've been making presentations up and down the state to other colleges who have adopted our model. We also got rid of prerequisites for all of our classes in ESOL. Which has made it much easier for students to use prior learning, for example, to get into the right level that they need. We've also been listening to the state, who's been telling us that they need more workers. And we realize that our students can do more than just work in kitchens if they don't want to work in kitchens, for example. So we created English for Healthcare Careers, a new program that we're offering here at Laney College and at the Oakland adult site at Parker in East Oakland. We've also been responding to employers' needs. We've been putting embedded ESOL teachers, tutors into our CTE classes here at the college to help our students basically reach whatever dreams they have. Next, we have been responding to demographic changes. As you know, Laney College became a Hispanic serving institution 2 years ago. To reach that, we had to get 25% of our students being Spanish speakers and Hispanic heritage, and we immediately jumped to now 33%. So ESL department has to respond to that. We developed a newcomer program to help the explosion of unaccompanied minors who are coming to this country from Central and South America. We are also working on what we're calling the ESOL to Puente pathway to make sure that students don't drop out along the way between those two endpoints. And lastly, I'd like to talk about how we're reaching our long fingers out into the community. We are working in East Oakland. We are teaching classes at Oakland Adult at Parker, as I mentioned. Also at Salvation Army, we'll be working in East Oakland. We are working with career readiness in the Lau Family Center in Fruitvale. And we've also done work with Raya Zion in the Chinatown Cultural Center. So these are just some of the wonderful things we've been doing. But ESL isn't the only star on campus. I'd like to introduce Dr. Leslie Blackie, who is a biology professor and also our wonderful Faculty Senate President.
Good evening, trustees, district chancellor and vice chancellors, board presidents, and all my wonderful Laney faculty, students, and administration. When I first started at Laney, a wise man by the name of Lewis Quinlan taught me that all academics are career education and all CTE is academic. So with close to 20 CTE programs at Laney, we developed a CTE advisory committee to allow our programs all across the campus, not just in the CTE division, to be able to talk with each other and to support each other, and sometimes in very, very surprising ways. For example, the CTE Expo, the cosmetology students do makeup and hair before folks go over to photography to get headshots. Or working with the welding department and the biology department wrote a grant together to get a scanning electron microscope, because yes, you use microscopes to look at biology things, but you can also use a scanning electron microscope to look for welding fails and structural analysis. We have some wonderful summer institute programs that were started that were survey programs. So we had iDesign that came out first, which was machine technology, welding, carpentry, and wood tech. And that worked so well that a couple of years later, we had iCreate started with photography, graphic arts, media, and the computer sciences. And then we had another program that joined in called iEat, between culinary and chemistry and nutrition and biotech in the biology departments. So all these are really exciting ways that the CTE programs have worked together. When we had shut down in March 2020, our CTE and science programs faculty immediately started an ad hoc committee to develop safety protocols so we could bring students back to learning the hands-on skills that they needed in many essential fields. We were so successful that we were teaching face-to-face classes back again that summer. So Laney never shut down. We always had some students on campus, and we had no classroom-centered outbreak ever occurred because of those safety protocols. We were really happy with that. When we think of CTE, we think of building and skilled trades, which was what we used to call vocational ed, and we are going to hear from them. But I just wanted to highlight a few more things. Did you know that we have machine tech students that have made parts that NASA has used in their space program? That culinary not only trains in a variety of skills, and let me tell you, taste testing for the baking class is the best gig ever. But I digress. But we also have a bistro that prepares 3-course meals for service on Wednesday and Thursday nights. Come on by and enjoy a really wonderful meal. We have graphic arts designs that are for many, many businesses and corporation logos that are come out of that program. Our commercial music program is training folks to work in sound booth and the music industry, behind the camera as well and microphone as well as in front. We are in the forefront of establishing AI as an education discipline in the state and are training folks to work and design as AI techs, really that CTE aspect. Not only are students learning art history and making art, but they're also learning how to set up and work in galleries so that they can prepare for shows. We have our award-winning student-run newspaper and investigative journalism. We have engineering classes that have BattleBot competitions in the quad, which are really fun to watch. We have so many things in addition to, as you saw, some of the tiny houses, and a lot of other things. So I want to introduce the 2 programs we're going to highlight today. We're going to have the environmental control technology, which is presented by Sappho Sue. We have such a wide range of students, some out of high school, returning to school, and even some of our Peralta facilities folks are cross-training skills in that program. And then we're going to hear wood technology by Myron Franklin. That program has helped develop our own Fab Lab. It interacts with the art department. It does cabinetry work with construction projects and so much more. So with that, Sappho.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Sappho Sue. I chair the Environmental Control Technology Department. Today, I'd like to tell you about the 2 pathways in ECT and how it has impacted the community. First, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration. We offer pathways in commercial and residential lines of HVAC and refrigeration for buildings, but we're also involved with local demands for refrigeration at the transportation, warehouse, and cargo transportation sectors. Secondly, building automation systems pathway. We prepare students for energy jobs in energy, sustainability, and building commissioning through software controls and hardware controls. The department is proud to have a partner in Johnson Controls International. Laney College is one of 30 community colleges in North America selected for the Community College Partnership Program. This year, we are in the third year of this Community College Partnership Program, and we established a mentorship program where we pair students and JCI employees so that they could learn more about the industry. This year, JCI will also contribute to proprietary technology for the department for a lab. In the picture here, this is our JCI partners at Laney College with the leadership this past November in a lecture series called Sustainability in America. Thank you. And next we have Wood Technology, Myron Franklin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Myron Franklin. I am the department chair of Wood Technology, and for many years, I was the single full-time faculty member until recently. Luckily, we were able to transition to 2 faculty members through a lot of hard work, as many of you can attest. And like some other people that spoke earlier, I would like to give my deepest thanks to one of my mentors, Mr. Lewis Quinlan, who showed me the ropes and taught me how to make those kind of things happen. So it's really instrumental in doing that and sharing that. Our program is kind of singular. It's the only program like it in the district, the only program in the Bay Area like that provides certifications and associate's degrees in this specific industry field. And one of only about 4 in the whole state where you can actually get a certificate in this type of career pathway. That being said, we tend to work our program into a student-based model inherently because we have made many strong efforts to deconstruct those barriers to access as we've developed our curriculum pathway over the years. So that being said, we do not have any prerequisites in our program. We are wide open to anyone that wants to come and learn. And right now in my class, I have a student that's 16 and I have a student that's 67 in the same cohort, right? So it's extremely diverse, which is fantastic. Definitely creates more challenges in instruction, but that's sort of the beauty of it. Our program also, because it is project-based learning, it really lends itself to collaboration, cross-disciplinary, and work-based learning models as well. So throughout the history of the program, we've really partnered well with other programs around campus, and that's part of our mission goal as well, to sort of provide our skill sets to others as well. So you might have seen the tiny houses, the original first few tiny houses. We collaborated with carpentry on those before we got a full-time faculty member who could do that as well. We still support those programs as well whenever necessary. Right now, currently, if you came up through the cafeteria, you might have seen the new space for the food pantry over the summer. All of my student workers, along with our other full-time faculty member, Rosendo Del Toro, fabricated all of the fixtures and cabinetry and decorative wall panels for that new space. If you were here in the spring as well, you might have seen us collaborating with the art department to have the first show of art meets the trades called Hands On. It was in the Stein Art Gallery. I think, Rudy, you were able to attend that. And it was one of the most well-attended openings that the gallery had had in recent years, really successful. A few students got some commissions out of that show as well. So really good outcomes as well. Further on, in a little more nuts and bolts, the ways we've removed barriers to access and to improve equity is by aligning with the the funding formula for incentive-based outcomes. And we moved our program to a stackable certificate system pre-COVID, and just now have been able to realize that. So we've seen our certifications and associate's degrees double every year since COVID. And this year we'll be looking to possibly give out up to 50 certificates this year. If we can get everyone wrestled in there. So students in our program, they will take 9 units the first 2 semesters, and each of those units qualifies for a separate certificate, state approved as well. So once again, we've also created multiple points of entry and exit to our program. So we do have many students that we help find employment directly. We can pretty much place any student that wants to work in the field of study at this point in time, which is a fantastic situation to be in. So many of those students come back to us now for retraining for automation. So you might think of woodworking as kind of like old school hand saws and things like that. It's computer-based automation technology driven today. So it's extremely advanced. So through that, we have really sought out opportunities to work with our campus and other departments, as well as the facilities as well, to be able to showcase our expertise and to allow students practicums that are real and solid and can be carried on with them into their field of study. So please come and visit us. We're happy to. You board members, I think you may get a little glimpse tonight of what we do down there. So that was all student produced specifically for you. So thank you for having us that opportunity. And I thank you all for allowing us to have this opportunity to address you. So I would now like to introduce the next person, our Classified Senate President, Ms. Hope Lane. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to welcome the trustees, the board, the chancellor, our presidents from the district, and everybody who came to bless us with your presence. And we appreciate you guys, and it's glad to have you guys here. I am like they said, the classified Senate president. And although this says student support at Laney and has just a few of our classified professionals and staff and administration in this, we do more. We support our students wholeheartedly with these programs and resources. I know there are a few that aren't on here. Our counseling department, our counselors, the classified staff, our welcome center, A&R and financial aid, and our basic needs, and just all the classified professionals who help put this event together, not just this event. We are also doing the dump day on Friday. So they've been working wholeheartedly, and I just appreciate you guys, everybody who has supported me, the Senate, and just what classified professionals do here and throughout the district. Thank you, Chancellor. We have our next symposium coming up at BCC. I look forward to seeing classified professionals there. And on November 8th, we will be hosting the Northern California gathering of the Senates here on November 8th, and classified professionals. I hope to see you guys there. Thank you so much. And now I would like to introduce Roger Chung and his team from Restoring Our Communities, who just celebrated their 8th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hope. Thank you so much. Vince, you want to come up here too, please? So yeah, happy 8th birthday to us. My name is Roger Chung. We have our counselor, Kim Blackwell, here, and we have one of our dedicated student service specialists right here, Vince. And so I want to talk a little bit about who we are, and I'm going to do so through a little bit of data. And so as we celebrate our 8th birthday, we're also celebrating we're nearing our 1,000th enrollment, right? So we are a program that serves formerly incarcerated students and incarcerated students, and that means that there are thousands of years of incarceration experience that have walked across that quad. And what it's culminated in is our biggest award year yet. The 23-24 year, we saw 66 degrees, certificates, and awards. That includes AAT, certificates in CTE. It includes a whole bunch of things that I think our community needs and our community deserves. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we got there, right? How do we get to those 66? You're going to hear from my colleagues in a little bit. But one of the things that we do is we try to tear away barriers. We try to reduce the harm because of prior contact with the criminal justice system. And so on a daily basis, student service specialists like Vince are providing a safe space to reduce stigma, a safe space to do homework, right? Professional development across faculty, across classified, right? In order to really engage the campus community around issues of incarceration and in many ways, abolition. We're going to see our counselors do student education plans, intrusive deep counseling to ensure that folks are accelerating towards their degree pathways. And we do so also by partnering with our community. Two major partners, and we'd really like to thank the board for this because we know it's really difficult to create MOUs, letters of agreement, and contracts with other agencies like our County Office of Education, like our county public defenders, right? And so what we do is we do clean slate 3 times a year right here at Laney College, and we've seen over 200 records dismissed, reduced, or expunged here. Y'all know what that means, right? That means, right, passing a background check for a job. That means, right, passing a background check to get that apartment that you need, right? But what else do you need for an apartment? You might need better credit, right? And so what we do is we embed financial coaching here via contract as well. And so the cost of incarceration also is a debt for a lot of our students, right? So a lot of folks have restitution, right? They've been sent to collections because of an unpaid bill because of going to jail. And as a result, we have a credit coach here that empowers our students to engage their debt, to look, right, at their financial situation and feel, right, that this is something that they could overcome and can accelerate their ways into the community to provide services for the region, for the county, and for the state. I want to give it to Vince for just a second, who's going to introduce our counselor, Kim Blackwell. Some of the stuff that we've been doing, being recognized by the state, right? And so people have been knocking on our door. They said, Roger, Vince, Kim, can y'all come to Alameda County Juvenile Hall and create a satellite college there? Professor Kim and Counselor Kim's going to talk about that for a little bit, but I want to give just 30 seconds to Vince to introduce himself because this is not just our 8th birthday, right? This is Vince's 8th birthday here. He's been here since the beginning. Check us out, laneyrock.org. You can see his story right online. Vince.
Hi, my name is Vince. I am the student services specialist along with Elisa and I. We man the office every day, Monday through Friday. Like Fridays, everybody else leaves early. We're here till 6. I'm here till 6. So, and I just left the office from tutoring a student, getting him through a test because he's visually impaired. So these are the type of things that go on in the office. But I'm formerly incarcerated myself, a formerly incarcerated college student, Merritt College alum, represent. But I love Laney. I really love Laney. Been here. Sorry, they got me. And I'm very proud to be a part of the fabric of Laney. I've grown up here with this campus, and they've been nurturing to me, and I've been nurturing to the students, and so it's been a symbiotic relationship. And with that, I'll give you Kimberly, who's doing her thing as well. So.
And so before our counselor and coordinator, right, newly, right, onboarded coordinator for the ROC program, did y'all know that we've had some students, that we currently have a student that's incarcerated that's attending UC Berkeley, right? Did you know we have current students, right, that have transferred to HBCUs after incarceration? And so
you're taking all of my stuff I want to say. Okay, I have nothing to say anymore. They said other things, but my name is Kim Blackwell, and I'm the brand spanking new counselor and coordinator with ROC. I remember I actually came to Laney around 8 years ago, and you put something out to everyone at Laney and introducing ROC. And the first thing you said was, I'm going to have a library for you to learn about what it means to serve incarcerated students. And I was working in general counseling with veterans at the time. And I was like, I want in. So technically, I actually have been working with the population here at Laney the entire time. Because you all would just send students to me. I was like, send them to me, please. And since spring of 22, I have been teaching at Juvenile Hall, Counseling 30 Personal Growth and Development. We also have a team that includes an English instructor, Mexican Latin American Studies, commercial music, and we want our team to grow. So if you're interested, holla at me. And one of the main reasons I've always been interested in this work is about what I've heard from a lot of people today, which is about increasing access and who is the least likely to have access to education, our students who are incarcerated. It is fantastic. We want to make sure to provide them the exact services that our students here are receiving. So in addition to teaching, as Roger said, I'm also working as a counselor, and that includes creating ed plans, helping students think about their vision, not just what they're doing now and how to get through a class, but to think about their options. So we have students who are not only completing their certificates, associate degrees, but we do have a student who's transferred from the community college to an HBCU, community college to a CSU, community college to a UC. So to me, Rock is doing exactly what community colleges do, which I think is fantastic. So that's all I have to say. And I want to invite you all on November 9th to meet me at the lake because we're raising funds for my scholarship. One is for a community college student who is incarcerated, and one is for a community college student transferring to an HBCU. So November 9th, 10 a.m.
Thank y'all.
And now back to President Besikoff.
So tonight, thanks to my wonderful colleagues, you've heard about the first-class programs we have here, as well as the first-class support. And I actually have to tell you about the time that Rock was celebrating its first birthday at a CIO conference. Somebody attended a presentation on supporting formerly incarcerated students. That person heard about Laney College for the first time, and that person's name was Rudy Besikoff. So just thought I'd offer that. The first time I ever heard about Laney was Rock. So you've heard about all this and a lot of what's happening. At the end of the day, the thing that I'm so proud of is with all of this work we're doing and all of the collaboration, more of our students are getting up on the podium to graduate. That's happening. And of course, just for the board's reference, I've included additional data within the presentation for you that kind of spells out a bit more the three percentages that you see here, just to share what has happened just over the past few years with us. And in closing, I would just like to say, in addition to thanking my colleagues here at Laney, I would like to thank you, Chancellor Gilkerson, as well as the Board of Trustees for honoring us with your presence this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you to the Laney team for that presentation. Really appreciate it. I wanted to open it up for any questions or comments from my colleagues here on the board.
We're not going to say too much, but can I just say that I'm so inspired by all of you and what you do. And if I had a tissue here, I think I would most certainly need it because you are incredibly amazing. And I almost wish that we had an opportunity to have come earlier and have heard from you. And I'm glad that we do what we do, but I think we always need to do more. So just thank you for the work that you continue to do.
Trustee Gonzalez, your honor.
Thank you. It's been a great tour, starting at, I don't know, about 4:30, something like that. And I have too many questions, so I'm not even going to start in because they're like really in the weeds sorts of questions about, and they mostly have to do with what do you need? Where are the roadblocks? How can we be doing better? How are we strategizing around, fixing things? yeah, I, I have too many questions. I'm super impressed with what you managed to do with so little. And I'll speak for myself, but I think I'm speaking for the board that we are really committed to figuring out how to bring more resources to this community. Not just Laney, of course, the entire district, but I think really the flagship at Laney is like, it's really critical. So I'm super impressed. I did have one, I'll just ask one kind of in the weeds question about the ESOL program and the self-guided placement. And, when AB 1705 came in and AB 705 came in, I think a lot of us were really worried that a lot of the ESOL programs were just going to be completely wiped out. And you seem to have figured out something that's working. And I'm really curious about how that works. What have been the results? What are the best practices that we're able to share with our partners throughout the state? I think a lot of us were really divided over AB 705. It wasn't at all clear to a lot of us that this was the right approach. You seem to have problem solved this in an elegant way. I'm interested in more detail.
So it's a wonderful question, Trustee Gonzalez. Thank you so much, and an incredible job by our ESL department. So I do want to just offer. I know President Besikoff will give a direct answer, but I do want to say that there's still questions that are out there about AB 705 and AB 1705, and we certainly just recently had Monica Henestrosa come from the Assembly Speaker's office to visit with faculty members, got to talk directly to ESOL faculty about what's going on in math faculty, about the barriers and what that looking like. And so what you saw with ESOL, and certainly you saw on display tonight, was real ingenuity and creativity about being able to connect and really design something out that added more things. But we also see that the demographic has changed in our math classes. It's very evident to faculty members in that department about the real need that they see and those kind of things. And then ultimately, when we talk to our student accessibility services areas, they're talking a lot about those needs and how those students, without having developmental mathematics or English or ESOL pathways, that can be difficult for them. So we were able, I think, just to elevate that, at least to somebody within the assembly who's making decisions for us in Sacramento. I was really grateful to the CE faculty who joined us as well. But I wanted to let you know that it's still something to be studied and to be thought about, but certainly want to highlight what ESOL here at Laney is doing.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and just, with my background being ESL, go ahead and respond to this a little bit. Throughout the journey that someone has in acquiring a language, the challenges are as diverse as the students in the classroom. And, along the way, just speaking from my own experience, I've wrestled to speak, read, write 4 different languages. And within the space of that, my needs were very different. And at the end of the day, what really works with ESOL guided self-placement is the fact that it reaches out and asks the student, what has your learning experience been? Where are your needs? Because a number of our students come from cultures where translation is really just, that happens. We also have a number of students who grew up in this country with English as not their first language, but having different needs that are not addressed by traditional ESL curriculum. So you have a lot of various things at play, but to really put the art of placement in the hands of the students to a degree has them learning and acquiring languages on their own terms.
A question about the ROC program. Thank you for that work. It's really powerful to hear the life-changing nature of it. And I wonder if you can say a little bit more about the community partnerships that are listed here in terms of, who are you working with? What are the roles that they're playing? What other community partnerships do you see potentially helping the program where we could help facilitate some of those relationships? I work in the community every day and would really be honored to help make some connections where needed.
President Gonzalez Brito. Certainly, I think Professor Chung would be great to answer this question. I'll ask him to actually come back up to the podium. There are a number of partnerships out there. Of course, the Alameda County Public Defender's Office is one, but I'll ask Professor Chung to please fill in the answer.
How about now? It was a great question. So just to repeat it, the board is asking, how do we develop partnerships? What is the nature of our partnerships? And where do we see the future of partnerships in being able to serve both currently and formerly incarcerated students? And so we learn a lot of the needs, like the ESOL team, based on the stories of our students. And so Vince, Kim, Simone, Elisa on a daily basis are getting to know the stories of students, so we figure out exactly what those barriers are. And if those barriers initially came to us as conviction records that stop people from getting jobs or housing, we wanted to kind of create a way to be able to remove those barriers before a student graduated. We wanted to accelerate a student into a living wage job or into, right, their human citizenship. And so initially, our first formal partnership was with the Clean Slate program. We wanted to be able to embed services for a community that may have lost a lot of trust, right, in the public sector, didn't differentiate a lot between, right, county services like probation, public defense, district attorney. And so we wanted to be that liaison. We wanted to be able to demystify what our partners were doing, and we wanted to create trusting relationships such that our students were willing to share their stories. And so when we asked the Public Defender's Office for what can we do for a partnership, they responded to us and they said, well, we have our needs too. The Alameda County Public Defender's Office, at least the Clean Slate program at the time, said that one of the biggest barriers for a person to be able to relieve a record was their ability to write a letter to a judge, or their ability to find, right, character references in the community, their ability to find a support network that could speak to, right, the transformation of a client. And so we had a very natural partnership in which, right, our Vinces and Elisas and Simones and Kims of the world would sit down with students and say, this is who I am now, right, and this is how I would address the court, right? This is what I've done academically to be able to prove that I can come and contribute as a worker and a taxpayer into this region. And so those are some of the ways that we've kind of developed our partnerships, really identifying what our partners needed and really taking our students' experiences and stories, right, and developing a contract to be able to create deliverables and to win grants, right, and to win philanthropy to be able to support those things. We don't know, right, if the Rising Scholars grants are going to be there forever. We don't really know if our partners at Cal Wellness will be here forever with us. And so we are asking the board, we're asking the administration, we're asking our community to help us sustain these services, right? And maybe allow me to write one less grant or two. And so that's kind of how we developed our relationship with the Public Defender's Office. We have MOUs with other organizations like Spark Point of Oakland. As I mentioned, the Alameda County Office of Education, we developed a CCAP agreement so we can do dual enrollment inside Alameda County Juvenile Hall and across all the county schools. We've just, and thank you so much, board, passed another contract with our newest partner who's going to be Impact Justice. We're realizing that the work needs to be replicated across the state. We need, right, the innovation that Kim, Elisa, Simone, right, and Vince are bringing every day. And we need to make sure that other colleges in the Rising Scholars Network are replicating what we do. How do we get that next incarcerated student to an HBCU or a UC? And so we've just passed another contract, thank you to the board, with Impact Justice to be able to take some of the things that we've been doing in juvenile hall, support students through the court system, and then replicate those things across the state. That's a long answer. I got a lot more, but I'll stop right there.
I just want to hop into on this that the Rising Scholar program, of course, our state chancellor is really encouraging this. And one of the things that the board can do is to continue to help fund us to go to things as simple as going to like ASCCC. Kim Blackwell gave a talk along with another 3 people on a panel on how this work is done, how it impacts, to really talk to other faculty as well. And as Roger said, to really start replicating the programs. And another place that this is beginning to infuse language is the work that we are doing to change the language against like academic probation, right? Taking that language out as well. And hearing about rising scholars, hearing about Rock really helps, I think, faculty understand, oh, this is important about academic probation. That is a barrier to our students. So again, supporting these grants, programs, and even just something as simple as a little travel budget for faculty to go to these conferences, to work on reducing academic probation language, to present this work is really, really helpful. And so we appreciate the board doing that. Thank you.
Board President, there's a question in the chat. We'll go ahead and from one of our trustees. Sasha, would you like to read the question, please?
Yes, ma'am. This is from Trustee Johannes. She says, thank you so much for this in-depth presentation on what Laney offers to our community. Just a quick clarification question. Is there a registration link for the Lake Merritt Walk Run? Thank you. And I'll send it to her.
Yeah, so the announcement went out. Trustee Johannes will make sure to send the link out over to the Board of Trustees for sure. There's a donation button, but you can just come and show up and wear your Laney gear. How's that? It's a fun walk or razor. Okay. Trustee Quinlan.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for the presentations. It's, I think, a powerful example of what education should be in this country, which is service to our community, as opposed to a commodity that goes to the person with the most money. And the work you're doing, I think, just really sets that model up very well. It's not an education that you see in most of our country, and I think it's just a powerful way to serve our communities. And I think it's our board's job to find out, get the most resources into the classroom, to our students, to our service departments, and to our teachers, so that they can continue this work with a great deal of success that they've started.
Thank you. Any other questions? No more questions online? All right, thank you again, Laney, for that presentation. All right, so with that, we're going to move to another presentation, part of our study sessions here, 1.7, Student-Centered Funding Formula and Calculating Total Computational Revenue.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Board President. The California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office uses the SCIF, the Student-Centered Funding Formula, to allocate funding to the California Community Colleges based on performance and student outcomes rather than relying solely on enrollment numbers and full-time equivalent students. So in alignment with your board goals, the presentation tonight from CEO Nelson and myself will give an overview of the SCIF, how total computational revenue is computed, sorry, I'm tired, computed, okay, and the district's fiscal outlook. So please, we'll move to over here in a second. It was coming out of my mouth and I was, so you could use that and I'll do this. So good evening, trustees, really, and community, really pleased to be able to give you a little bit of an overview, as I said, aligned with the board's goals. So board, as you know, we have the student-centered funding formula, which is designed to allocate funding to us based on a model that really is looking at performance and student outcomes versus relying on just simply enrollment. And this primary goal of the funding is to incentivize colleges, right, to really help students complete and close those achievement gaps. And that's the way it's been designed. So really, there are 3 major components to the student-centered funding formula, which I think are important for the board to understand tonight. So first is 70% is the base allocation. I'll go into this in greater depth, but this is a 3-year rolling average of full-time equivalent students, and then we get some funding for the size of the college and the institution we are. Next, we have a supplemental allocation, and that is about 20%, and that's demographic based. And so it's based on AB 540 students, Pell Grant recipients, Promise Grant recipients, looking at specific categories of students. And the reason they're doing this is really, again, trying to close those achievement gaps and recognize the different types of students we serve. And lastly is a student success allocation that is also on a 3-year rolling average around earning degrees and certificates, making milestones that we can achieve along the way. As we know, this is the continuum. And so we'll go into a little bit more depth right here. So it's really important to understand that all of our things work together. And I really want to thank the research team and all the teams in all of our colleges, because what so much goes into this is that we use what we call MIS data. So we use data that we send to the state and financial reports that we send to the state that give us an idea of how we're funded. And so you can see here on the screen is different ways that we look at. So basic allocations comes from prior year. So that is done based on the prior year. And it comes from our financial report that we do annually to the state chancellor's office. And you can see there are many different ways that we look at the ways the data is cut, but it's important that our data is clean, that we're able to do it, and that we know what we do. So our IT folks, everybody's working behind the scenes, right? Making sure that we have good data in there to be able to work with the formula. So let me start with the basic allocation. So I always tell people, like, it's kind of cool. Like, we get a basic allocation not only for our full-time equivalent students. So, you know, full-time equivalent students is 1 student taking 12 units or 5 students taking up to 12 units, right? So again, it's based on that full-time equivalent. So it's mathematically based. And then what's interesting about it is that we use that as part of it, but it is also the base of just being alive, I call it. It's called the being here and being around kind of base allocation. And that's because we get an allocation as a multi-college district. We're under a certain formula right here. And then because we are less than 10,000 FTS, we get about $6.5 million a year as a base. We multiply that times 4. That's sort of what becomes our base allocation. So that's, remember, 70% of what happened is based on enrollment and based on the type of institution we are. It's important to point out here too, though, you see tiers. So in a multi-college district, if you move up above, right, that level, you move up and bump up to another level of funding. So it's kind of written right here. And you can see right now our base allocation is $26 million just on the basic allocation. And then the next part is we get an $80 million allocation based on our FTS allocation, giving us the $106 million that we get in the 70% of our funding. So the next part of the allocation model that I'm going to go over is the student success portion. And this is 10% of our allocation. And the numbers in the slides project our actual numbers right now as of July 2024. So it's really important to see that this is the data that we have. But how student success is, oh, actually, I went one too far, huh? Sorry, let me go back. Supplemental. I was like, I slipped a slide. Let me start here. So supplemental allocation is 20% of our allocation. And the supplemental allocation, I said, again, is based again on the July 2024 advance, but it's based on head count. So it's the prior year actual head count is the way that they use the data, and they give us a point value. So for every AB 540 student, we get 1 point times, right, the rate of $1,215.96. Do you see that? So it's a basic sort of mathematical thing. And we had about 419 students who are considered AB 540 for our district last year. When we look at Pell Grant recipients, we get 1 point for Pell Grant recipients. And you can see here we had 4,891. And then for Promise Grant recipients, it's 1 point as well, and we had 11,294. So that gives us actually the computation of our revenue in about $20 million coming from the supplemental allocation, the type of students we had in the prior year. What I pointed out to the colleges when we've gone and done the roadshow is that I really do believe, obviously you can see here, this is a small number of Pell Grant recipients across the district, right? There are areas where we're looking at the data and thinking about what is it that we're doing and how we can actually look at the type of students we are and making sure our data is clean as well as we move forward. So now I'll move on to the student success allocation. So again, I apologize, I previewed this, but this is 10% of the allocation. And this is actually based on a 3-year rolling average. So it's kind of can be a little bit complicated. But basically what you see is the way the state chancellor's office has done it is said, we really want to say that we believe, right, at certain points, certain populations may require, right, more support or things like that. And so trying to build a formula that says, if all students were equal, right, we do 4 points for an associate degree for transfer. If you get a credit certificate, you get 2 points. And then it looks at our head count over 3 years, gives us a 3-year average, and then does the rate by the number of points. So it's kind of a mathematical formula that goes across. But if you see Pell Grant recipients, according to the state chancellor's office, again, 6 points for an associate degree for transfer versus 4 points that we have for all students or Promise Grant recipients. Does that kind of make sense? So it really is basically laid out, and they use our basic headcount data and what? How our students have done. Their completion, what we talked about today, hearing about Laney's, growth in certificates and degrees, all sort of counts towards the work that we're doing here on the 10% of our allocation. And so all of this together brings us to, let me give you a little hypothetical example. I thought it'd be helpful. So student Tamil, that'd be me, earned her ADT and is both a Pell and Promise Grant recipient. So assuming I took a full load, this would be how you kind of compute it. See, I fixed it this time. So the basic allocation is basically for one full-time equivalent student, it'd be $5,294. What you see is we're dividing it by 2/3 because again, it's a 3-year rolling average. And so that's kind of the way you're thinking about it. So for me, it'd be $3,547 on the base allocation. I am a Pell Grant and a Promise Grant recipient, so I'm getting 1 point each because I was that in the prior year, so there's no division of anything. And then what you see here is the success allocation. So we get 4 points for the associate degree for transfer, 6 points because I'm a Pell Grant recipient who got an associate degree for transfer, 4 points because I'm Promise Grant recipient and I got an associate degree for transfer. And then that's all divided by 3 because it's on a 3-year rolling average, right? And so what you really see there is the total success allocation is about $8,110. But if you looked at the total funding, you might think, just so you could see for Tamil, what you might earn from me is about $14,000, right? For what has happened, Tamil's numbers and the data that's laid out here. So this is just an example of how really our total computational revenue is starting to be defined. So you can see here again, you have base allocation, supplemental, it's giving us the rate and the head count of the students. This is the summary page that shows all of these, our Pell Grant recipient bonus, as well as our Promise Grant recipient bonus that we get. And it pulls out to a calculation that gives us really, we're going to go in more depth, but about ultimately $148,941,102 to work with. I'm going to turn it over to COO Nelson to go through the next couple slides.
Thank you, Chancellor. So on this exhibit, you'll see Exhibit C. So you'll see this when you open up your attachments if you're in the audience. But what I want to show you is to go back to what the Chancellor has mentioned about the 148,941. When you actually look at the computational revenue between the base allocation, et cetera, this is the document that the Chancellor sends to the Finance Office. So as you go through it, you'll see the 148. You also see the property tax and the ERAF, which is the local revenue we get from the county based on parcel taxes and so forth. And then as you come down to the bottom, you'll see a 2.4052% revenue deficit. And that's what I want to touch on next. Maybe. There you go. Oh, too far. touchy? Okay. There we go. All right. So the deficit factor is basically a calculation the state uses when they're out of money. So the deficit factor goes up as the state runs out of resources. There's a lot, all the colleges across the state have needs based on their FTS and the SCIF. So what happens is they'll raise that deficit factor as the Department of Finance gives them data and they say, okay, we're going to cut you a little short. So what's happening is you'll see in the percentage for the tentative budget, we were at 2%. And in July at the adopted budget, they raised it to 2.4%. And now as at the end of September, they've raised it to 4.3%. So what does that mean overall? That means in the current fiscal year, we have to cut another additional $2.8 million for the current fiscal year on top of the $12 million we've already incorporated for this year's budget. So it is a reduction that we're going to have to absorb. There it goes. So under the funding protections, just to revisit what the hold harmless means. So the district receives no less than their 17-18 TCR. And as you know, the hold harmless expires. So this is now the new funding floor that we're at. So we can't drop any lower. But as we've talked about during the roadshow, what we've talked to the Board of Trustees about during the adopted budget process in our town hall meeting is although we have a funding floor, our expenses continue to grow beyond that funding floor. So that is something we'll have to take a look at as we're moving out through the rest of this fiscal year. So, but the TCR is something that is to understand the hold harmless. And to give you an example, about 59 districts in the state of California right now are in hold harmless stability protection. So that just gives you an example of where a lot of the districts sit across the state in regards to the TCR. So with that in mind, we wanted to move on. Maybe there it goes. So to the FTS trends that are going on across the district. So to give you, we wanted to give you some perspective before COVID and currently. And then before COVID, we're going over a 10-year period. So this starts in 2014-15. You'll see we're kind of flattened out just under 20,000 FTS. We took a dip in 16-17. And of course, we went back up right before COVID started. And we were on the downturn. And we really have not recovered from our pre-COVID levels. But it's also kind of the reality we live in currently. And so I just want to make sure we understand where we came from and where we currently are so that people have a good understanding on that 3-year rolling average, it impacts that FTS number. So while we can do great work in any one year, it gets averaged over 3 years. So we need to keep that good work going over multiple years for it to actually have a major impact on the formula. So if you break that number down a little deeper by college over 10 years, you'll see the top line is Laney College, followed by the College Alameda, Merritt, and BCC. And so you'll see the impacts over that same 10-year period. And just so for the people who are data nugget people like I am, that number is broken down by 10-year for the data chart. So when you see your presentation, you can see where I got my data from. And then as you break that down a little further, we wanted to go say, okay, what about the 6-year funding model over 2 3-year periods? And this kind of goes back to the roadshow, how we talked about the delta between what we've actually earned and what we're actually funded at. And you'll see the gap at the end there. And in the roadshow, we projected that in 25, 26 and in a future year. And so it's important for us to understand is why that funding floor is there and what we've earned is lower. We're starting to go up as far as what we actually need for out-year projections. And we don't have the resources to meet that need currently. So when you look at FTS compare, we wanted to show you what FTS looks like when you compare it. Believe it or not, I don't know if you realize this, but there's only 3 districts in the state that have 4 colleges. The rest of them either have less or more. So there's only 3, us, State Center, which is in Fresno, if you don't know where that's at, and then Los Rios up in the Sacramento area. So all 4 of us have 4 colleges. So we just want to show where we stand amongst our 4 college district partners across the state. But then we also wanted to show you what that looks like in a little more comparison to the Bay 10 and show you what we look across the Bay 10. And as you can see across our sister colleges, across our sister districts, I should say, we're the only college in the Bay Area with 4 colleges compared to our sister institutions that have 2 or 1. And of course, I noted the basic aid districts as well. The data that you're seeing from FTS is also just a footnote. It's from the data mart. So anybody can pull this data. And then when you look at this compared to like size districts, like size being based on FTS, when you look at us based on like size district, we're still the only college with 4 colleges across districts with 1 and 2 colleges. So as you can see, we're very large in footprint, but we're small in population. So we're going to go over the Peralta's fiscal overview now. I'm going to try to say one button ahead of myself. The State Chancellor's Office TCR projection that we have spoken to a little bit, but this, I know it's tiny, I can't even read it from here, but it basically shows you what our hold harmless is for this year, and shows you, they'll give you the maximum computational revenue that they can based on the formula. And so it's important for us I highlighted the 24-25 fiscal year, and you can see the future years based on the needs of the district. Also in the state funding formula portal, we have the ability to forecast. So if we want to say we want to have a 2% enrollment increase or a 3% enrollment increase, we have the ability to forecast what that looks like and in the impact to the formula, so we can actually see what our revenue would look like in future years. So revenue and expense projection based on the governor's budget proposal, I've updated this a little bit based on what we currently have in the adopted budget. So you'll see the 6.56, the 8.22, and the 1.07 as far as COLAs that were offered into the budget. You also see an expense projection. We're about 4.8% year over year for expense increases for the district as a whole. And then you'll see, as we mentioned before, revenues for several years will be sitting at the funding floor, but our expected expenses. This basically goes back to reillustrate in data form the graph of the gap as you see in those outer years. And so it's important to know that we got to do more. Now, what have we done over the last 10 years? So I went back 15 years actually and looked at what the district has done as relates to the budget. And I want to walk through some of these just to show you some historical trends of what the district has done. So in 13-14, there's an $11 million cut, and it was the same year the district decided to pass a parcel tax, which generates about $8 million a year. The following year, we decided to borrow from the upcoming summer term so we could stabilize our FTS for the prior year. We did it again in the subsequent year. We borrowed again from summer, but that came back to bite us in the following year. And 16-17, we had to pay some of that FTS back because we overextended ourselves. So in 17-18, we borrowed backwards this time. So the accounting gimmicks are starting to run out because you can't borrow and pull from FTS. It's actually a financial, that's also what led to a lot of the financial aid findings we had, because you can either count summer as a header or summer as a trailer in financial aid, but you can't keep doing it back and forth. So that actually caught up to us in audit findings. 18-19, the district froze $4.5 million in positions to cover the district's deficit. 19-20, we relied on the COLA to balance the budget. Very little was given out to the employee groups. 2021, we cut $2.8 million, and we had a hold harmless of 7.1. 8.3 million stabilization funding in 21-22 due to COVID. 22-23, $21 million in hold harmless. 23-24, $10.1, and we're at hold harmless again. All that's to say is we should have done a much better job of strategic planning for out-year projections for this district. And essentially, from where I stand and being new to the district, we have kicked the can down the road way too long. It is time to make meet or maker. We need to do something now. We can't keep kicking the can down the road like we've done for the last 15 years. We have to do something in this fiscal year, or we're not going to make it. Some of the challenges in meeting that long-term goal is the reserve policy for BP 6250, which I'll go into a little bit when you see the financial documents. We also have ongoing costs. We need ongoing costs for deferred maintenance, and which affects the total cost of ownership. We need to certainly increase the OPEB trust. We are the lowest district in the state when it comes to funding for OPEB. Increase in demands on health insurance. We have now a 10% rate increase that's going into effect for this fiscal year. However, we only projected a 5.69% increase. So that's an increase of almost $300,000 in this fiscal year that we have to absorb as well. We have an ongoing 6-year increase in pension cost form in the form of PERS, We need to address the outstanding student debt for the district, which is right now at $37 million and growing. Ongoing fiscal monitoring for ACCJC being held harmless to the SCIF, impacts on deficit factor from State Chancellor's Office, and that's just one slide. And I could probably go on. So the fiscal forecast based on the 0.91% COLA across the board. I know you can't read this, but I'm gonna read it out to you. So in the current fiscal year, as I talked about a minute ago, we have to cut a hair over $12 million based on the deficit factor and other things and health insurance and so forth. We now have to cut an additional $6.5 million in this current fiscal year on top of the $12 million we already had to cut. Mind you, we're 4 months into the year. Also, too, if you'll notice at the very bottom, if I can use Chancellor to point without touching the screen, thank you. If you'll notice, 14.97% is the current reserve projected at the end of the fiscal year. That is not the current reserve level set by the board. If we were to set the reserve level based on the board, the cut for this year would be $9.7 million in addition to the 12. So as you can see, the hole is digging deeper. In the subsequent fiscal year, next fiscal year, that we're planning right now for between the college budget committees and the district office, we have a basically $13.5 million cut reduction that we have to handle. What you've noticed is on the temporary employee savings, we've adjusted it from $6 to $3 million. We have critical positions we need to fill across the district that we're currently holding to help us get through this fiscal year, but it's not tenable long term. We have to fill some of these critical positions across the district. But also, too, when you look at that, it comes to $13.4 million. If, again, you were trying to meet the reserve target set by the board in BP 6250, that cut for next year would be just over $15 million, and on and on. So you can see I wasn't hesitating when I said we need to do something now. Opportunities for growth, though, there is somewhat of a silver lining, if you will. We did have growth last year in the funding formula. However, we have to get there first. So what I've presented to you today is we have a base of $13,835, which is our base for this current fiscal year. Right now, we sit at about $13,452 in FTS. To increase our base, what we have is we have $7.1 million sitting in growth funding available in the SCIF that's available to our district, solely just our district. However, we have to increase our FTS above the $13,835 figure data point. So to do that, I've given you 3 scenarios. If you were to increase 3%, that's 20 FTS over our previous number, and you can see the subsequent impacts of that. So if you were to go out to the end and you were to increase 7% on your FTS, we would be able to generate $2.9 million that we could draw down essentially immediately if it were to happen overnight, or we could pick it up mid-year or at the beginning of next fiscal year. But that number is good for 3 years. I would just say that's a great position to be in to a certain point. There are colleges right now that have unfunded FTS because they have grown too fast. And so there are several colleges with $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 FTS that currently cannot get funded because they don't have enough money to state. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the Chancellor.
Thank you, CEO Nelson. I appreciate it. So I think part of what I want to do is talk a little bit about the opportunities we've had and we've been taking. So board, you have been a part of this. And so first of all, I want to just say your decision to adopt goals that are directly related to the fiscal health and the long-term sustainability of the district is part and parcel of really helping us all be on the same page. And we've had a lot of opportunities. We've talked about this across the district is the need to identify efficiencies. You all voted at your last board meeting around centralizing utility payments, right? Between Laney College and Merritt College as being one of those things. We're talking about things like centralizing office supplies so that everybody doesn't, get their brand of paper, but we're really thinking about how do we have economies of scale, looking at exploring district-wide contracts for things that we're all each doing differently. Is there an opportunity for work more collaboratively together? Improving our vendor onboarding process is something that we've already radically started to work on, and payments. We have been not making payments in timely fashion. We've had penalties that we've had to pay, increases in the cost to do business with folks. So we want to improve on our ability to do these things, which will then reap some fiscal rewards for the district and be more judicious with the way we're doing things. And we're also looking at contracts. We have not reviewed many contracts for many, many years. So we are reviewing contracts, rebidding those out, essential services, putting out RFPs, asking people to recompete to serve us and looking at the ways we can do this. Again, so there's a lot happening on the fiscal, the back end side. The colleges are doing this work as too. The presidents and the senates are all coming together through participatory shared governance, looking at ways that we can come together. And we really, another area is beginning to have those conversations about engaging in student-centered course scheduling, right? We need to embrace the swirl. We've been talking about it. This is the kickoff that we had at our Fall Flex, and optimizing services and really thinking about this. So VC Vasconcelos, working with the college's vice presidents and the presidents, are really talking about how do we optimize services for onboarding students who go to all of our colleges and want to know all of the things. I was talking to the student trustees the other day, and they were like, man, if I knew College of Alameda had that, I'd want to go over there too. What are you doing about that shuttle, Chancellor? This was the other day. I'm like, I'm working on it. We're working on it, right? So there's opportunities on student communication, knowing those particular things. We're implementing auto degree awarding. That is going to come this year, right? Which is an opportunity to say, hey, Trustee Gonzalez Brito, you earned a degree, you didn't even know it. We want to award it to you, right? Again, optimizing that student success allocation, honoring the student's work, being able to do those things. So we really need technology improvements, and CTO Mewele is actually really working on these kind of things. So how do we bridge really outdated sort of systems to do this? We need to really talk about duplication and competition across the colleges. How are we competing against each other? What you're doing. So President Blakey spent most of the trip talking about how we do not fund career education enough. I don't disagree. I've had conversations with folks about this, right? Where are we choking up the opportunity to grow in fields where we need to do this? And where are we actually maybe oversaturated in particular subjects, not just looking at a particular college, but across our 4-college district? Examining and addressing barriers for adult learners. If you look at all of the data, we have less students coming into the K through 12s. We have more students in our area who have no or some college, right? We need to be tackling into adult learners, looking at optimizing and thinking about how we're doing things like that. And then I'm excited to share that we just passed the new shared governance district-wide handbook. The new, what we used to call PBIM, is now built, and we're going to be having a district-wide student success and enrollment management committee, really trying to center these conversations and talking about how we're allocating out for the disciplines in our district. We've also done work around increasing dual enrollment, right? So this year we added 40 FTF. In a time when we're cutting, we added 40 FTF to the schedule directly for dual enrollment to work on these things. I want to again call out the great work that's happening at the colleges around dual enrollment, offering these things. I know we've increased that with Alameda Unified School District, but we also recently got a Golden State Pathways grant as a partner with OUSD, so Oakland Unified School District and Emeryville Unified, focused on pathways and in dual enrollment. So again, thank you to VC Vasconcelos for the work. So it isn't, I love CO Nelson, right? Like just telling it like it is, right? It absolutely is, in my mind, like a really important thing that we're having this conversation tonight, setting up that we're 4 months in. And again, right, multi-million dollars of additional cuts that we did not plan that we were going to have to take. But I don't want to forego the fact that we are working to try to do these things. It's like how I say, it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, it feels like consistently. And so I think I really want to be able to talk about how do we embrace a pathway forward. And a lot of people always say to me, oh, Chancellor, like, oh, like every administration says that the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And I'm like, have you not seen that the sky's already fallen and we're like walking around it? I mean, you just looked at historical trends and we could have gone back 20 years, right? Like you have heard and talked to faculty members who said, what, we want to improve. I mean, even just going to the journalism lab and seeing just the improvements that a small amount of money can help do these things. We do not budget for those kinds of things. And so the sky has already fallen. And what we're doing is living in a space where we think, you know, that it's okay. And I know that everybody is doing their best. So this is not a slight on anybody or any place, but it's about putting out the conversation that we desperately need to have in the district. And I just feel very passionately about making sure that we have it and that we do it and that we're transparent about it. And we're as humble about the fact that, you know, we're not all sure what we're doing, right? So even before the pandemic, this is just such an important thing, and it goes back to the historical trends. Even before the pandemic, this SCIF would have resulted in a budget reduction of approximately $4 million. We've kicked the can or been saved, right, by protections or by sort of what's been happening. And that was, again, on our 17-18 through 19-20 fiscal years, right? The data that we had and what we earned. So we really need to be examining those metrics that we went over. How are we improving student success? How are we getting students to completion? How are we helping support them? And it requires us to be more intentional about aligning. And ultimately, for me, it's really about a culture shift. It really is this kind of piece about this. So it's thinking about our students, right? And this to me is what's most important. We have this opportunity, right? Like students are already trusting us with their academic journeys. They're already coming here and saying, we want and we do. We heard two students tonight talk about like sort of how life-changing, right? Being in the journalism program has been. We've seen the number of students who come through the cosmetology program. We've heard about the full classes in our carpentry program, people going to work right away. We know we're doing incredible things. We're asking students to love their future. That was the campaign we did this year. We said, love your future, students, come, love your future, whatever. And I got to ask you all, we need to love our own future. And loving our own future means being upfront about what we can and can't do. It's about telling the truth to each other, right? And having the things and remembering that this is who we're doing. If we ask them to be learners, we should be learners too. If we ask them to plan out a future that's uncertain for them, we should be willing to do the same thing as well. And so I really am going to call on the district, and I'm calling on you trustees to help lead us in this moonshot thinking. And really this is about, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. President John F. Kennedy said this when nobody knew how to go to the moon. Nobody knew how to go to the moon, but he did what? He said, I'm setting a goal. We're moonshot thinking. I'm calling on us all to really be moonshot thinking. We need every individual in this district to galvanize and come together and be innovators and thinking differently and be willing to take off the old dregs of what it was, because the data is here. It's not going anywhere. It's not changing. We might get saved by something, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to this community, to each other, and our students deserve, and you all deserve nothing less than for us to be doing this. So thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor, and thank you, CEO Nelson. So we'll open it up for questions and comments. Vice President Quinlan.
So I have two questions. The 4.8%, I think you said deficit factor from the state now. How is that in regards to Prop 98? Is it a violation of Prop 98's principles?
The state has the ability to raise, to give you an example, back in 2012, 2013, the deficit factor was as high as 11. So they've been able to do the deficit factor and they've been moving it around. But in prior years, the deficit factor has been close to it, almost at zero. So they're using it because the state's looking for resources. The colleges are starting to grow. There's just not enough revenue to offset the cost of the colleges.
So the second question is in regard to our reserves. When we passed that 16.67, we were basically told that the state was mandating that we do that to be able to access certain funding from the state, that we needed the 16.67. And if that's not true, why can't we go back to the 10%?
Yeah, you make a good point. So I've heard the same arguments. So I went back and pulled the minutes of all the meetings when that happened through PBC and through the board. That was based on the GFOA and Government Finance, Governors Finance Office of Administration. So it's based on a federal recommendation. It has no merit at the state level. The state level is 5% by code. And so there is no requirement to go to 16% to the 2 months expenditure rating. That is something that districts can choose to do if they have the resources. But to give you an example, this district went from a 10% reserve to a 16% reserve overnight. So it's about $1.7 million per point, if that gives you an inclination to how big of a jump that was.
So that doesn't impact our ability to get some kind of funding from the state?
It does not.
So why are we at 16.67%?
That is currently our board policy.
So can we change that board policy?
So we'll be coming back to you with a recommendation. This is setting the stage, but we are going to be coming back with a recommendation regarding the reserve policy. Ultimately, a reserve policy is an important part, right? So let's not downplay how important it is to have a reserve. I don't want to downplay that. But again, percentage wise and how we get to there and how we grow sort of slowly and continuously with an eye towards something is different than setting a target and leaving it like stagnant over time. And so we're working on a proposal to come back to you here shortly.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Trustee Gonzalez, you on?
Thank you. You've got a number of, first of all, the presentation is really helpful. I mean, it's frightening. But I suppose it's good to look at that. So thank you. It's also super informative. Just kind of putting together different data points. I particularly liked two things, and one was the FTES scenario, like looking at growth and what we might do if we hit different targets. And on the next pages where you talk about opportunities, what I would find helpful is a ballpark dollar savings. Like, all right, if we got efficiencies in contracting, what's the range of what we might expect? And I think that would be helpful, you know, to like, are we playing at the margins here? Like, we're going to save a little bit, but this isn't going to fix us. And it's kind of like Trustee Quinlan's, you know, like we can look at the reserve, but our reserve isn't big enough to deal with the scale. So, you know, whatever we set as a reserve, that's a temporary fix. That money's there. We can change policy, but it's not going to change the math. Okay. So here's now my confusion question. There's a chart in here with 10-year FTS, and the number there is 13,452. And then there are other charts there that show our FTS at 16,614. And I was trying to understand the delta.
Yeah, so
I
the
missed that somehow.
Yeah, so the 13,000 is a current year based on last year. The 16,000 is the rolling number, so it counts last year. So that's the growth portion of 22-23. It rolls forward. So that's why. So this fiscal year that we're just closing, that you'll get an audit for in December, you'll see that that number is declining. So even though that number is 16 that you're talking about, this current fiscal year, when we do the mid-year update, it will drop. So that 13,008 and change is our current, what we're working off this current fiscal year as our base.
Where we are right now.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at the 10-year chart, let me just pull that back up again, because what you're explaining sounds right, but what page? It doesn't have pages. No, it does.
Sorry. So the 10-year, right here, 14, slide 14, 13 or 14?
Yeah.
Thank you.
13, please. Mark. Thank you. Next one. That.
All right. So if I go back on that 10-year.
So the 10 years based on the P1 data from last fiscal year. So once the P2 data is adjusted and the data mark, because all these data figures are pulled from the data mark off the State Chancellor's Office website. Once the new numbers for the end of the fiscal year are adjusted, that number will go down.
So the 16,614 is what we were funded for.
But that was the target.
That was
not our actuals.
But our actuals were 3 years ago, 11,775, then 12,9, and then last year was 13,452. Okay.
Yep.
So that's what we're actually earning versus what the state funded us for.
Because of hold harmless and all of those protections.
All right, thank you. That's super helpful to try to understand. So we weren't close to what we were funded for. And so that the scenario that you laid out then, where you said, well, look, if we got 7%, we could earn another $3 million or something like that. Okay.
Trustee, could I answer your other question too?
Yeah.
So remember when we did the tentative budget and then the adopted budget, what we had in there was about a $2 million request, right? That we were going to find efficiencies. So we set a $2 million target, which again, in the scope of all these things, right, is small in comparison to the largeness of the cut. But it was a way to put a target to the district community to say, could we do these things? So we took a different budgeting principle a little bit this year as an incentive. for us to work together. So we built that into the budget. I believe we can hopefully exceed that target and meet more as we're sort of finding areas where we can actually improve. So we can be certainly working on, as we give the board an update later, about where we are about hitting our targets, as well as the vacancy savings targets that we took for the $6 million as well. So just to give you a sense, we did have some targets in there
Okay.
identified.
So I had one other clarification question. I don't want to be taking all the time though. In the data you laid out, you were looking at us as a 4-college district, and you were comparing that to other colleges in the state. And I was trying to understand why you were raising that. My understanding from multiple presentations from the administration is that the fact that we're a 4-college district simply means that we earn more money because we've got these campuses. And if we went to a 3-college district or a 2-college district, the delta in our funding because of what we earn by having a college versus a center versus something, the efficiencies of, let's say, losing a vice president or a president and making that person a dean or whatever it is, wouldn't make up for it. And so why I'm asking is, you've got the data out there, which presumes that you're thinking about something. Can you help us understand what you're thinking about by laying out that data?
Yeah, I think what I'm doing is went on road shows across the district to just articulate for folks the size of our district in comparison to other people, right? We have to be looking at these things. And if you're awake around the state and around the nation, it is, right, the fact that the cost of all of it to run and to keep facilities going and doing these things are something that we have to do. So whether or not the district has done a deep dive and really looking at what that is or what that might be, you have asked me to come and serve this district and to put all possibilities on the table and to give you the data to make an informed decision. I'm not standing here to make that. I'm saying data you wanted to know about the state. We wanted to tell you where we were in FTS. I think it's important to look at those things. And so, you know, a cursory look at a $6 million base that we could get. Well, what does it cost to run an institution and do these things? Are there efficiencies that we can do? What can we do, right? Can you prune in some ways as a 4-college district and be able to grow? So I'm not making any statements today about what it is, but I'm offering you that everybody has said that nobody tells the truth about stuff. And I'm just trying to say, this is the truth as we know it. You could go to the data mart and look at it. And I felt like it was really important to lay it out for the board as one of the many sort of things I didn't put on as opportunities is certainly is that we are a land-rich district, right? There is opportunity. Again, that's several years out, but there's a land-rich district to look at the resources we have and think about public-private partnerships, whether or not we want to sell something, how we want to do things. So I didn't put those things in because tonight was about a learning lesson about just sort of FTS and SCIF. We are going to continue to scaffold these conversations throughout this year because as CEO Nelson said, and I feel there is an urgency to the work that we're doing. The presidents are trying to give the message at their colleges. I think that people are worried about these things versus sort of how do we come together and think about the moonshot thinking and what we can maybe do. And so we're hopeful to galvanize folks to really take a look at what's happening. So that's all that it was just to put the data out because I've made like inferences to it. So I wanted to show people exactly what it was.
That's super helpful. I appreciate the candor. And how many colleges now have seen this presentation? Or is this?
So they've seen parts of the presentation. So a large part of this presentation, the college has seen. This is an iterative piece based on our growth since the last.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Napoleon Valeries.
Thank you for this presentation. We have been waiting a long time. We've been waiting a while for this. I think we've actually asked our previous chancellor to also give us a presentation, but it's a difficult conversation to have. The data is very difficult to have. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we have had many different presentations that have poked at different parts of it, but to actually get it in this particular manner. And I'm sure over time, we're going to get more information. It's daunting. It's absolutely daunting. But there are 3 things that I had imagined to be true, and now I think evidenced by data. And I think it's something that it's a reality that we are all living in, and we have to couple that with some of the
historical short-term, long-term solutions that people have put forth, knowing that this was going to come. And so I think that that's something we have to think about. We can continue to go ahead and say we can find short-term solutions. We can grow our enrollment. We can do X, Y, and Z. But I think that we've seen the result of kicking this down the road. And if we really are going to do right by our students, right by the communities, we really have to think thoughtfully and intentionally about how we are going to prepare the colleges in the district for the future. And obviously that's going to come through conversation. But there are three things that were particularly interesting to me. So your data sets on your three particular slides that talk about the number of colleges in a district and the number of districts, the number of colleges in the districts around us related to FTES. That is so clear in terms of we are the only district with 4 colleges with, in the Bay Area, 16,614 FTES, 23-24. And like-size districts with our FTS across the state, we are the only college with 4, maximum 2. Like that to me is quite clear. And I think that those are the kind of conversations we need to be happening. And it's politically unpopular. It's going to be politically unpopular. It's going to be unpopular on so many different levels. But I think that's a really important conversation for us to have. Coupled with the other reality that's also difficult to swallow are enrollments. Our enrollments, and we've had reports that have talked about how exciting it is that our enrollments have increased since the past semester, but it is only recently that we've actually looked at our enrollments within the context of the past 6 years or the past 10 years. And thank you for putting that in the budget, because I think it was a 7-year budget that we were looking at. And if we were to be, again, very frank with ourselves, 23-24, we are at, is this FTES or student head count? Okay, FTES, 14,000, actually averaging out, it's about 13,500. So 13,500. In 2014, we were at 20,000. We are not going to go back to that, considering demographics, considering a variety of other variables that are happening that have been talked about across the nation. And so the idea that at 13,000 or 13,500, we have 4 colleges, that just, it's almost, I think we just have to ruminate on that. We have to marinate on that relationship. And then those two I had in my mind, but I had already been thinking about, but thank you for bringing the evidence. But then the other part of it that was really helpful to me is going back to the particular, this has happened somehow, some way before, but let's actually look at the historical funding challenges and how this district has responded to that. And this I did not know, where in 2013-14, we had an $11 million cut. So we had the passage of the parcel tax, which helped us. But as we all know, financially and economically, we should never be using parcel tax for issues that are going to be ongoing, right? And then we continued to borrow, and it caught up with us, and then we had to freeze $4.5 million in positions to cover deficits. And so again, it's so clear that we got to start having real conversations as to how to figure this out short term in order to prepare the colleges to prepare the district for true healthy community serving.
So thank you, Trustee Reese. And I want to, Napoli Bella Reese, I wanted to just address one thing, and just so you all know, like, I think about this all the time. Like, I literally think about this all the time, and I'm like, what do you do? How do you do? The other day I was in my office and I was like paralyzed. So Greg was like, well, what do you want to do? How are you going to do it? Like, well, and I was up to my eyes and I couldn't do it. So I had to take the weekend to really like reflect and think about like, am I leading the right way? Like, what are we doing? Like, what's the story to tell? It's so political. How do you like keep, you know, all of these factors, right, that you're like thinking about your head. And I came to a point that I wanted to just tell you about, which is the fact that like, I know that CEO Nelson and I gave a very sort of bleak kind of framework, but let me flip it to the other side. We're a multi-million-dollar organization with brilliant minds. Half of them are sitting here. They're you on the dais leading us. We have tons of 20,000 students who are coming through our doors and say, we want to do, and you hear students say, I went to Laney, I told my friend, they came here, they're the next one, whatever. I want the district to look at this in not so much a cut fashion. I'm telling you, here's the history, but let's start looking at it as abundance. What are we going to do with the abundance that we have here and use it in the best way possible in service of the mission of this district and how we do this? And sometimes we're going to have to say no to some things, and sometimes we're going to have to do this, but we need people to come together to do it. So I feel the way you have, I've had like a 2-week window to kind of like get myself, but I've been talking the abundance framework to everybody. I'm like, abundance. So people are like, hey, Chancellor, abundance. But it really is, right? So I really do believe in the power of this district to be able, so we can stay a 4-college district if that's what we want to do. We got to get people to the table to be willing to have the conversation about competition between the colleges. We have to be able to come together to say, okay, I'll walk 3 extra steps for the copy machine and not cry about the fact that I don't have a copy machine right next to my desk. We've got to be willing to say, okay, we're going to let X go and what, like that's what I'm calling in the district community to like join us on. So this is not a statement about, you know, 4 colleges, 2, 3, whatever. It's a calling in to say, you have said the sky is not falling. We are here to tell you it has already fallen. It has been for years, putting Band-Aids on the situation. And now's the time that we absolutely have it within our power to do something. We can do something radically different. We can reframe and be the 4-college district that works differently. We could use models from other states that are like system, you know, 4-college, multi-system colleges. So I think there's a really an opportunity here if we call it into. So I wanted also just to place that, you know, at your feet, just saying this is the way I'm sort of walking in the space right now, to say how grateful I am that we have, you know, multi-million dollars and incredible people to help us do this. And so I stay hopeful about where we can be, certainly even knowing where we've been before.
Vice President Quinlan.
So, Greg, you mentioned how many college districts around the state are maybe not as dire as we are, but in similar situations?
A little over 50.
50 districts?
Yes.
So this is not just our problem. This is a problem the state is having with the community colleges. What kind of conversations are going on statewide to address some of these issues? And I assume that we're participating in, knowing the two of you, that we are participating in those conversations.
Yes, I know from the CBO standpoint, we are having a deeper conversation with the state chancellor's office and the finance division about impacts that the funding formula has that was created prior to the pandemic, but what the pandemic is still, we're still reeling from the pandemic to some degree. Also, mindsets have changed about college, you know, since the pandemic as well. And so we're trying to have that conversation from a financial standpoint around the hold harmless, around how much we're funded for not only the new Black serving institutions, HSIs, because we have a different impact than say another college like Marin. So there's a big difference in disparity between colleges, even though there's a one cookie cutter size fits all approach. So from the CBO standpoint, I'll let the chancellor speak from the CEO standpoint, but from the CBO standpoint, we're really trying hard to work with the chancellor's office to make them hear us. And we have a conference coming up and we're having that whole dialogue. We have a whole session dedicated to the chancellor's office just on that, so she can hear our frustrations, because we're trying to serve the students and the programs as well. And we just can't get there with some of the resources that we currently have.
I think like part of it, she was right. We were looking at the general fund budget, and so much of our budget is also related to categorical funding, these particular things. So not receiving COLA on the categorical funding, like our disability support programs, maybe sometimes, or our financial aid administration, and those things put pressure on the colleges and things like that. So the CEOs have been working on advocacy related to those things. But I'll tell you, number one, off the bat, my number one thing is how we are funded statewide in terms of per full-time equivalent student. So we are paid about $13,000 for a full-time equivalent student in comparison to K through 12, to CSU and UC, who are upwards of $20,000 to $30,000 full-time equivalent students. We are far underfunded for the work that we do when we serve the majority of Black and brown students in this state. We are the #1 transfer feeder to CSU and UC. We create the pathway for them. So I hope that the trustees and CEOs, we're going to be galvanizing ourselves to really be talking about this ability for us to like actually raise the amount of funding we get for the community colleges. But, you know, it just continues, you know, Trustee Quinlan, it just continues to be, you know, an uphill slog for us. And, you know, frankly, and I love, and I'm grateful to the legislature who's done a lot of support, right, for student basic needs, for student housing options, for all of these pieces. But at the same time, every time that happens, we also get unfunded mandates that are asking us to do more things with less, and to, you know, make sure that every campus applies for EBT, and that we do this voter thing, and that we do X or Y. And all of these are incredible things, but they come at a pressure point to vice presidents of student services. I'm looking at VP Espinosa over there and others, right? It comes at it's a really hard for us to kind of keep these things. And we have multiple interests that we want to do, but ultimately at the day, we want to help, right, retain and graduate our students so that they go on to their careers.
Any other questions or comments?
And I just wanted to say that I know that I think I came in very grim in terms of what I had said, but I think that there's a part of me that's saying that as we look at this and as we have these conversations, I think we have to do a few things, you know, definitely within the lens of opportunity and then with the lens of abundance, but also be very real and very practical about what we cannot do. And that it isn't just going to be, you know, doing a little bit here and a little bit there, but actually having to do something big, whatever that big means. And it could be kind of detailed in a variety of different ways. And then the question that I had were twofold. This is a little bit more detailed. So, when we were talking about being funded on the FTS on this GIF, it was also according to full-time students, right? So if we had particular students that were not enrolled in enough units, that we actually don't get that funding or a partial funding.
No, we get funding for them. So again, remember, a full-time equivalent student could be one student, Tamil, who goes 12 units, but it could also be me and President Dixon and President Johnson, and our cumulative units make 12 would actually be a full-time equivalent student.
Just because I was looking at our own data mart, and it seems like a majority of our students are 40% part-time. Okay. And then the second question that I had was, so the recommendation from the chancellor's office is to actually have 16.67 or 16.6 or 2 months, right? And so that was I just looked from the statement from the chancellor's office, and that was a recommendation. It wasn't a requirement, but it was a recommendation.
It's a recommendation based on the GFAO recommendation. So chancellor's office actually does not take a stance on the reserve. They give you a recommendation based on the federal. We don't abide by the GFAO. We never have as a district. Without getting into accounting terms, we're a modified accrual. We're not a cash-based company. We're not on a FASB basis. We're on a GASB basis. So we don't have to follow GFAO if we don't want to, and we never have. Most districts, I'd say 95% of the districts in the state do not follow GFAO. I'll give you just a quick example. In the district I came from at Marin, they have a 13% reserve, but their budget's bigger. They don't have 2 months reserves. They're achieving to that, but they don't have it. They have a AAA bond rating. They have all those things. So you don't have to have that equation to meet the opportunities you have in front of you. You can actually get there in other ways.
share a little bit about, and I think part of what ACCJC and folks are talking about, right, is this continual ability, like where we're consistently cutting, right? And then we have reserves, and this is certainly what's come out in other presentations that you saw. So that was part of the reasoning and rationale around what the budgeting principles we took this year to say, we know we'll have vacancies. Let's build that into the budget so we're not, cutting to the bone as much as, we unintended things that are happening now. So we're really trying to, again, be more transparent about what it is, but certainly the reserve goes into that. But really what they're asking us to do is to just be financially stable, to budget what we do and to stay right there and hit the marker and move to the next year. And we have big swings where we're like taking multi-million-dollar cuts mid-year, half-year, every year. And that's causing what the fluctuations are and the concerns about our fiscal stability long-term is.
Yeah, so to give you an example, the district right now, we have a 16.67. So imagine a line, and we sit there and we go up and down, up and down. And so ACCJC sees that, rating agencies see it, and it hurts us because it says we're deficit spending. Our revenue to debt ratio is too high. So for instance, last fiscal year, we overspent $1.9 million. It was in the reserve. It was there, but it fell below the floor set by the board. So as long as that's the floor, right? So if you keep swinging up and down, it just shows instability as a district. And so the rating agencies, ACCJC, the state chancellor's office, they all see that swing, that violent swing every year. And so it makes it unpredictable. Hence why we got the negative rating from Fitch, because it's a negative outlook, because it's unpredictable what's going to happen in the future.
We have a question from Trustee Delphine Polk as well.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry again to not be there in person, but I really want to spend a minute just appreciating you, Chancellor Gilkerson and COO Nelson, for this presentation. This is really clear. This is something that we've been looking at for a while as well. And so I have thought a lot about this, right? Like, the ability for us to be able to come up with sound solutions starts with having common data points. And I really, again, appreciate the high level amount of work that's been put into this presentation as a starting point for the conversations that we're inevitably going to continue having around what we're going to be doing around our funding. And so I'm really keen to talk more about revenue generating things, as I've been talking about a lot. So I really look forward to seeing more information about that in future and then continuing this conversation, because I think in order to be able to move forward in a cohesive way, we have to agree as a district on what the problems are and how to fix it. So I just wanted to offer that observation. And yes, thank you again so much. Really appreciate it.
I want to return to the question about enrollment and FTES versus headcount. It's useful to look at the FTES, but I think it's also useful to look at headcount. And so maybe we could begin actually including headcount in. I'm thinking one, headcount is a useful metric of potential, right? It's like, well, we have that many students. Could we convert that many students to more FTES? But I also think it's critical to understand the cost of headcount. So we get funded FTES, but we actually should get some kind of a bonus for headcount. One FTES is a lot cheaper to serve than with one student than 5 students making up one FTES. And there's something wrong in the formula that way. We have to look at really where our students are and how to accommodate those students. Pushing students to go full-time when they're just not prepared to go full-time is bad education. It's also bad finance. And I think that that's an area that I think we need to look at. So that's a data point that I'd be really excited to see for that opportunity. And I'll just say that I want to come back to your final slides, which were these kind of moonshot, like, all right, this is crazy impossible. How are we going to figure this out? The reason I'm actually a lot more hopeful about this is that we're having this conversation. I think in the past, when we tried to have this conversation, it's really blown apart quickly. There were just things like, oh, no, we can't talk about that because it's just, and you'll be attacked if you raise the question. And I think that we're not doing that anymore. And that's actually pretty exciting. I think the fact that you've paired this presentation with the adoption of a new shared governance model is actually critical. I think that is the solution. We, in fact, are the solution. I think, you were saying, look, we've got all these brilliant people here. It's really, really true. And if we were ever going to solve this, I think we're at the moment we're going to do that. I don't know what the answers are. Maybe there's going to be some amazing thing that we figure out, or maybe we will collectively go through a lot of shared pain that we have all agreed we will share, and that we're not the enemy. And I think that's actually sort of the critical piece of it, that we are not treating each other like the enemy anymore. This board is not doing that. And I think this district isn't doing that. So, I think we've done a lot tonight. I don't think we're going to solve anything tonight.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Thanks.
Thank you. I really appreciate the cue about headcount, and we can certainly be looking at that conversion. I know like College of Alameda and the other colleges have done like a take one more, campaign and those particular things. There's a lot of research out over, the way you can use your schedule, design your courses, think about who you serve, that we haven't even really necessarily tapped into. And so to your point, I'm really excited about the hairy, audacious question that we put in front of the very smart people that we have in this district, including our students, to tell us, right, like what it is that we might be able to do. But, folks walked around the campus and said, man, we need to fix this. We should do this. And I'm like, absolutely. Let's make our list of the type of district we want to be. Let's put what it is. And then let's figure out how to use that abundance to do that, and then figure out again what you said. And so I'm really looking forward to those conversations, and grateful to the governance groups and everybody for coming together and taking a chance on this new governance model. We got to make it work in January, but I'm very, very hopeful that we'll be able to do it.
I think it'd also be really helpful if we could get together with our sister districts and colleges to understand and quantify what does it cost to have each body on the campus. So, the enrollment costs, the financial aid, the counseling, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe that data is in fact already available in some way. We might be able to figure that out, but I think that's a powerful lobbying point. Yes. It's just.
No, it's absolutely, we're working on that information now. I mean, it does go into our calculation. Like when we think about the calculation for international student fees and what we can do, we're actually doing a cost analysis of what it costs for us to educate a student. And then, we set fees for students that are not here, right, as resident students based on that. And we can already tell that our district, it costs us more in a lot of ways because where we are, how it costs to procure, what it does to live here, right? Those things exponentially put up the cost of what it is. And then we've gotten in our own way sometimes, right? Penalty fees, those kind of things, pieces like that about like good stewardship of like making sure that we're paying our bills, and those particular things all kind of meet. But it is more expensive for us to educate a student right here in the 9-city Bay Area that we serve in. And it's a vital part of the state. We are like the head of manufacturing. There's so much R&D going on here. There are so many good things that come out of this community. There's no way we're going to let any of this fail, right? Because it's good for this state, it's good for this community, and ultimately for our students.
Thank you.
So I just have two final comments. The first one is the contradiction I see is our financial situation against the work that this faculty, this classified staff, this administration showed us tonight, and when we were up at Merritt, and I assume we're going to see the same thing at Berkeley City College and Alameda. Not saying that's the same model we have to follow, but we cannot move back from the work that these people are doing. I mean, it's too powerful. It's too good for what exists in our community. It's too important to that. The second contradiction is we are looking at downsizing in some sense, and we have another $500 million in bond projects that, based on our size, do we really need? Or where do we need them, you know, where they're focused on going right now? Is there a better use for that money, for that bond money? Can we change course in the middle of, you know, change directions in the middle of our course? And I think we have to think real hard about that, as opposed to buildings that we may not need, that may never get used to the capacity they need to be used, and put that money where it needs to be put.
Really great points. And I want to just underscore and want to thank, PFT President Santieri for saying what he said, right? Like it didn't go on deaf ears, right? Which is to say, if you're talking to faculty and staff, there are real lived issues and concerns. And you heard that in my flex speech, right? Safety, what are we doing about that? How are we doing technology? How are we thinking about the buildings and the infrastructure and the ability to do things? So like, that's the real, like, as all of you are saying, are the real conversations that we need to have. And it's absolutely why we're exemplifying what are these programs and opportunities where we know that there's a pathway forward for folks. But we do need to be thinking about those things. I am pleased that finally Laney College projects have come out of DSA. So the fire alarm project came out of DSA. The theater, we got approval for the theater project. We finally got approval for the library project. And today we got approval for the locker room project, which has been a Title IX issue for decades. So for me, some of the basic things, but I think there are projects that are unplanned that people want us to do that we really need to your point, really have a deep conversation about how we're doing it, how we're managing the bond, and we're making improvements already. You all voted on and implemented a new tool for us to track and manage our own bond spending payments so that we understand what we're doing. We've closed out Measure A, right? Really looking at Measure G, when we'll go for that next tranche, but how are we using those funds best to sort of fit these kind of things? And then ultimately, what do we do with the rest of the funds? We didn't talk about today that in 2026, the parcel tax goes away, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to go out for another voter supported parcel tax in 2026? It's coming before we know it. So there are real things, and tonight we won't get into all of it, but I invite again, everybody, and certainly board, you and I will be, and us, all of us will be on a journey in the next several months, really having the conversations. And I want to thank Trustee Delphine Polk about this. How do we be entrepreneurial too? I'm absolutely ready to go about being entrepreneurial and thinking about those things, and conversations with many of you, many in the community, and her and others have really sort of set the stage for being able to hopefully bring some ideas and then call on others to bring them too. So you're absolutely right. The contradiction exists. I know that for me, I'm just a hope-filled I got to just lean on the hope, Trustee Quinlan. So, but I've definitely wanted to bring the info. I was nervous, frankly, about bringing the information tonight, but I feel like it's the best way forward for us is to call out those things. So thank you for the comments.
All right, just one more. And I just have to kind of bring it back around. I think one of the reasons why I feel very strongly about, again, thank you for this presentation, but also about the conversations we have going forward is specifically because of how we started tonight's presentation. Hearing from Rock, Vince, Leslie, Sappho, Myron, and all the incredible work that they're doing. We owe it to the faculty, we owe it to the students, we owe it to the staff, we owe it to everybody and the legacies going forward to ensure that we do something now under incredibly stable leadership so that we can continue to do so much more for the communities that really deserve it. So it was really because of them that made me say what I said earlier on, and because of the work that what everybody is doing here at the district.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you again, President Besikoff, and to your whole team at Laney for hosting us tonight. And with that, we're adjourned.